Every house that I have lived in has been haunted. I have never really had any major issues before about a month ago. I have lived in the same house for about 11 years now, ever since I was 4 years old. This house is extremely haunted, and I'm afraid of something attacking me in my sleep. In January of this year, my dad started renovating the basement bathroom. My room is also in the basement. A few days after the renovations began, I'd fallen asleep on the basement couch. I wasn't fully asleep, and all of a sudden my whole body began to tingle. I was paralyzed, and I was fearful for my life. All of a sudden, I felt a hand wrap around my ankle and begin to pull. At that point, I was praying to wake up. Eventually, when I was halfway off the couch, I woke up. The next time I was at my dad's house, things got worse. The next time I experienced sleep paralysis, I was in my bedroom asleep on my left side, facing my bedroom door, when I felt someone hit my face once, then twice. Immediately after the second hit, my whole body began to tingle. Pain was surging through my face where I had gotten hit. The next thing I know, I was on my back with something sitting on my chest. The pressure of my chest lifted, and it seemed as if everything was quiet. With my body still tingling and being paralyzed, I felt an arm go underneath my waist, and the hand clutched my other side. I tried my hardest to clutch my bed with my fingers to keep myself on the bed, but I couldn't move. The arm began to lift me off of the bed until the only parts of me that were touching the bed were the top of my head, the tips of my fingers, and the tips of my toes. All of a sudden, it dropped me back on my bed. Ever since then, the sleep paralysis has become more frequent and more intense. I have no idea what to do. I hate sleeping now because of it. What do I do? My high school is fairly dated, since it opened before 1924. Of course, it'd pick up a few ghost stories along the way. Most of them seem to be centered around our drama department, which I was a member of for the 4 years I was in high school. In 2010, my sophomore year, I was painting the stage for Alice in Wonderland with 2 other students. The stage was like a big set of stairs, about 6 feet wide and about a foot tall, with the highest level about 8 feet off the ground. You could walk under the stage easily until you reached about the middle, then you had to crouch. The first 2 steps were unreachable underneath, because there was no way a human could squeeze through a not even foot-tall gap. The 3 of us were the only ones in the theater, and we know we were the only ones because we had the big fire doors on either side of the stage, and the entrance to the theater locked in a way you would only be able to get out, not in. We were sharing a bucket of black paint and shooting the breeze as we inched along the skirt of the stage. I was actually telling a story that I heard from a senior about a boy who supposedly hung himself backstage and haunts the theater. Halfway through retelling the story, my friend Shannon reached back to dip her paintbrush into the bucket and completely missed. We all groaned about the black streak on the nice wooden edge of the stage that we'd have to clean up, and pulled the bucket closer to us. I finished up the story and we moved forward a few feet. The other student, a girl I didn't know very well named Sarah, started telling another ghost story, determined to one-up me. This time, when I reached back to dip my paintbrush, I missed, even though I knew I pulled the bucket forward to rest near my knee. It looked like it had been pulled away from us, leaving drag marks in the fresh paint. We set the can in front of us and painted over the marks. As Shannon started to tell her story, we started hearing a tapping sound from under the stage. I got up and ran around to the open side to peek under to see if another student had somehow gotten stuck in and hid underneath the stage and was knocking to scare us. Using my phone as a flashlight, I couldn't see anyone. The tapping stopped, so we all gave a collective shrug and went back to work. After about 2 minutes, the knocking started again. It sounded louder, closer to us, under the part of the stage where we knew we couldn't fit. It was just a regular knock on a door type of sound. We ignored it and talked over it because it was just a knock, 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 knock. That must have made the spirit or ghost or whatever it was mad because it started slamming against the wood non-stop. Shannon and I slapped our hands over our ears because it was so loud. But Sarah leaned and pounded her fist against the top of the stage and yelled, "Stop it!" It stopped, but only a moment later her head whipped back and she fell on her back to the stage. Like someone grabbed her ponytail and viciously yanked her to the floor. She was in tears when she sat up, and she and Shannon ran out of the theater. I was the one left there with the keys to the light booth. I was terrified, but I quickly shut down all of the ghost light. Before I scrambled out of the theater, I said, "Thank you, I'm really sorry," and left. Which leads me to my next story. 2 years later, and I'm the costume director for a steampunk-themed play our teacher wrote. I'm sitting backstage in the boys' dressing room, hand-stitching some gears into a vest. I have my over-the-ear headphones on because no matter what, it always freaked me out to sit alone in the theater. For 2 entire years, I always had another person with me if I went into the theater. The dressing room I'm sitting in has mirrors on 3 sides, the back wall, the left, and the right. The front wall is where the door is, and the wardrobe. I'm facing the corner of the back and the right wall because that's the best spot to sit. And I could spread my supplies out on 2 counters and still reach everything. Over my shoulder, the door is about half open into the room. I can see out into the hallway through the mirrors in front of me. Out of the corner of my eye is an empty chair. As I'm sewing, I can see a short blonde boy walking back and forth down the hallway. I knew none of our cast and crew had a shade of blonde hair that this boy had, so I figured it was one of the band kids putting his things in our storage area. He must have walked past about 5 or 6 times before he decided to peek into the room. He saw me and walked in, sitting down in the chair right out of the corner of my eye. I told him to give me a minute. I was almost done with this gear, so he waited. When I pulled off my headphones, he smiled, still looking at me. I can see him in the mirror. But when I turned around, there wasn't anyone sitting in the chair. I dropped everything and bolted out of there, running down the hall and into the open safety of the workshop. No one there had seen a short blonde boy backstage. They all thought I was nuts. Suddenly, I got this feeling like I'd been punked. Instead of fear, all I felt was humor. Like he was showing me that he wasn't angry or upset with me for doubting his existence 2 years back. Why such a long wait, I don't really know. But I wasn't actually fearing being alone in the theater anymore. My mom has always told me the story of when I was a little girl, a few months old. We'd lived in this old trailer in Lexington, Nebraska. She said that she always had a sense that something was in that place, but always just shrugged it off. Well, I was only a few months old. Old enough to where I could sit up on my own, but I wasn't able to walk yet. So every morning, for the few weeks that we were there, I always had a routine with my mom, like she said. I would wake and gurgle and cry until she came. One morning, as my mom described it, I didn't do that. Instead, I was laughing and talking to somebody. But I wasn't in my crib. Somehow, my crib bar was down, and the basket of laundry that was on the floor was spilt over. And then there I was. My mom had told me that she had thought somehow I figured out how to bring the bar down myself. But then again, that I was only a baby. Well, there I sat playing with somebody, and she told me that as soon as she walked through my bedroom door, I started screaming bloody murder. I just would not stop crying. So she thought I was hungry and went to get me a bottle from the kitchen. As soon as she left, I was back to laughing. Later that day, I was fine. Just being a normal baby, exploring things out and everything until I came to this corner. I was playing with an empty Pepsi bottle and just sat in this corner staring at the wall and was following something with my eyes. My mom told me that I was giggling and just laughing my head off at whatever I was looking at. I don't remember any of this at all, but I figured that this spirit was friendly and enjoyed my company. I'm not sure. But I think that maybe it was my grandpa, because he had died when my mom was 2 years old. And maybe he was visiting. Well, tell me what you think. Thanks for reading. I remember walking home from volleyball practice one time, and when I got closer and closer to my house, I noticed someone walking in the driveway, and even saw him walk into my house. When I got home and went, I looked all over to see who came, because I was also waiting for someone to come over that night, so I thought maybe it was him. I went to the kitchen where my grandma was and asked her, "Hey, who was that came in before I did?" She said, "Nobody came in before you. Why?" I looked at her funny and said, "Are you sure? Because at the top of the hill, I seen someone come into the house. He was walking from the end of the driveway." My grandma put down the pan she was cooking in and said, "It was probably a ghost then, because nobody came in before you." It shocked me. I brushed it off. Then a few days later, like we always did, we were sitting outside while my grandma and aunt smoked, and we were drinking tea. It was nighttime, and we were just talking and laughing around. Then all of a sudden, we saw someone walk from our yard to the apartment in front of our house on the hill. My grandma said, "Oh my God, did you girls see that?" And I didn't see it at first, but my aunt did. I looked up from my phone and said, "What happened? Did we see what?" My aunt said, "There was a shadowy man just walking from the fence up to the apartments." I didn't believe her at first. "Stop trying to scare me. I know you're just lying to me." Then a few moments later, I saw it walk past the apartments. Then as it was coming back towards the driveway, it slowly started to disappear. My grandma and aunt put their cigarettes out and walked in the house. Soon after that happened, I went inside as well. I was sitting on the couch with my grandma, and we were watching a movie. Then all of a sudden, my baby cousin started crying, saying, "Get away from me." My aunt looked at him and said, "Who are you telling to get away from you? There's nobody there." My cousin started yelling, saying, the man, he won't go away and he's scaring me." We sat him on the couch with us, and then he was all right for a bit. A few weeks later, I was babysitting the youngest child in our household, and at that time he was barely 5 months old. I laid him down in the bassinet, and like 20 to 30 minutes later, he started laughing and staring in a certain direction. When I got up to see who was there, it was nobody. When I sat back down and watched TV, he started laughing again, and when I got up, he would stop. I finally just picked him up to come sit with me. A few minutes later, I heard someone walk up the steps. I went to go see because I thought I was home alone. I went to go see, and then, again, I see the man walk across the basement floor into my room. I didn't want to go down there because I was scared. Later, when everyone got home, I told them about what happened. My uncle said, "Damn, that's crazy." But I think it might be Grandpa Raymond, because he always stares at his hat in our room and just laughs. Don't be scared of it, but don't welcome it either, because it might not be him. In a way, I guess I felt relieved. It surely made me believe in ghosts then, because I never believed in them before I saw or heard them. But I know now that they're there. So I wanted to share these stories with somebody, but first I'll tell you a little bit about my house. It's a big 2-story, old, 100-year-old home in the small town of Elk Creek, Nebraska. I've lived here for about 8 years. Elk Creek is a small old town, and if I remember correctly from what I read, it used to be an old mining town. So it's not just my house that my sister and I have seen things in. A few years ago, my older sister's ceiling fell, and while cleaning it up, we found a suicide note. But I don't know if it's related to anything. The first story I want to share is of my sister and cousin. They were walking around and glanced in an alley between these 2 old buildings and saw this little 10-year-old girl with black hair and a bloodied white nightgown or dress. The little girl pointed behind them and seemed to scream, but my sister and cousin saw nothing behind them. And then the little girl was gone. Well, a while later, they saw her again behind our house. This time she wasn't covered in blood, but did the same thing. Now, I don't know if it's related, but a month ago, I was up talking to my sister, and I heard a giggle like a little girl giggle, but no one else heard it. Then, just last night, my sister comes flying out of her room, almost in tears, saying that her closet door just opened. I laughed and asked if it was closed all the way, and she said that it was, and that she heard the knob turn and open. I've seen shadows in my house before, and a figure up near the school hill, where this boy was killed in a car accident. My sister has also found the back to a lip ring on her nightstand that wasn't there before, and neither of my sisters who have their lip ring was at home. When we moved here, there was one of those old ovens that was built into the wall. This one time, my sister and I were watching Ghost Hunters, and Jason, the lead investigator, asked for a spirit to respond. And both my sister and I heard our old oven door slam. We jumped up and went to investigate, but the door had pans sitting on it. My younger sister and I have tried to find things out, but we couldn't. And I don't know where else to try searching. I can't drive, so it would be hard to find anything out. Well, that's about all that's happened. Ghouls, I hope you enjoyed these Nebraska stories. They're actually creepy. And oh my gosh, like every Nebraska story that I found was like 1,000,000 pages long. These are literally the shortest ones I could find because I am pressed for time, but also a lot of other ones sounded like horror movies, like rewritten down. So, I have to read through everything is what I usually do and try to find the ones that I feel are most legitimate. So yeah, I hope you ghouls enjoyed, because Nebraska seems to have lots of shadow people hanging around there. So, let's see. How was your week, ghouls? It's Friday. Finally. TGIF. God. It should be TFIF. Thank fuck it's Friday. Is that what it should be? I am rambling. You see what happens? Alright, hurry. Secret word of the day. Ooh, toothpaste. That'll be really weird for the people who don't listen to the end slate. To just see, like, people talking about toothpaste in the comments. Toothpaste. And as always, my last video will be on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.